Hello friends, and welcome to solving systems of equations with the substitution method. So substitution basically just means to replace. Substitution is done by replacing a variable or expression with an equivalent number, variable, or expression. So quick kind of warm-up sort of thing before we jump fully into this. We want to solve each equation for y or for x. And we're given an equation in two variables and the value of one of the variables. So for right now, we are evaluating. Y equals -3 times 4 minus 7. So -12 minus 7, y equals -19. And that's all it wants for us for right now. We want to solve for x, because we're given a y. So 5x minus, be careful here, it's negative already in the equation, and we're plugging in a negative number, so we need two negatives. Watch out for that, you will get a wrong answer if we're not careful. So 5x minus -1 equals 11. So 5x plus 1 equals 11. Then we start solving this equation for x. 5x equals 10. Then we have to divide both sides by 5 to get x equals 2. And then finally, x plus 2y equals -6 when x equals 6. So 6 plus 2y equals -6. Subtract the 6 on both sides because we want to get y by itself, and that's the first step to doing so. And then we divide by 2, and we get y equals -6. So hopefully doing these looks familiar, or is at least starting to come back, because it's going to be a big part of the substitution method. So we want to solve a system of equations using substitution when a variable, either x or y, is already isolated or is easy to isolate. This means on one side. So to solve a system using the substitution method, our first step is to solve one of the equations for either x or y. It really is your choice. Sometimes there will be problems where it's clear that one will be easier than the other to solve for, but other times it's going to be kind of the same either way. So then step 2 is to evaluate the expression of that equation in for the variable you solved for in the other equation. This sounds kind of wordy and confusing. We'll get to it. Then we just have one variable, so we can solve for that variable. And then finally we need to evaluate again. So this is evaluate or substitute. I'm going to kind of use those terms interchangeably. So finally we need to evaluate or substitute that value into one of the original equations. Again, the explanation is a little bit wordy, but hopefully actually going and doing the math will make a little bit more sense. So looking at A, y equals -x and y equals -3x minus 16. We want to solve for one of the variables, either x or y. And it looks like both of these are already solved for y, so that's step 1 done. Then we need to substitute the expression, one of the expressions in for the other. So since y equals -x, I'm gonna, in place of this y, I'm gonna cross it out and write -x instead. Because y equals -x, so we can just plop that right into it. So now we have negative x equals negative 3x minus 16. And now we have to solve for x. So we want to get our x's on the same side. So I will add a 3x to both sides, because that'll leave just a constant over here, negative 16. And that'll make our x's positive, which is nice. Then we divide by 2. We find that x equals negative 8. Okay, so in a normal equation situation, we would circle this and we would be done. But we still have step 4. We still need to substitute this value into one of the original equations. So plugging it back into one of the original equations is also your choice as to which one you use. I'm usually going to go with whichever one looks easier to do, because I'm lazy, and if I can get away with doing less work, then awesome. So one of the original equations was y equals negative x. We're going to now take the number that we got for x and plug that in. Again, be careful because it's already negative here, and we're plugging in a negative value, so it's got to be negative 8, which simplifies to positive 8. So our overall solution here is the point x comma y that we got, which is negative 8 comma 8. Another one. X plus 2y equals 20 and negative 7y equals x. Step 1. Solve one of the equations for either x or y, your choice. It looks like this one's already solved for x, so I'm just going to stick with that. You could divide by negative 7 here and make y by itself, but then you'll get a fraction, and that's just a little bit annoying. So I'm going to stick with the fact that it's x equals here. So because x equals negative 7y, that means I can replace this x with negative 7y. So that will become negative 7y plus 2y equals 20. And then we simplify. These are like terms, so negative 5y equals 20, divide by negative 5, y equals 4. Now again, in a standard equation solving problem, we would get here, we'd circle it, we'd move on. But that's only half of our overall answer. Our answer needs to be x comma y something. That is our solution. It's a point. It's a coordinate. So now we need to find x as well. We do that by substituting the value that we found back into one of the original equations. You can do either one, but I'm going to use the smaller one. So x equals negative 7y. X equals negative 7 times 4. So x equals negative 28. And now that is our solution. X equals negative 9y minus 2. And 4x minus 3y equals 31. So things are getting a little bit more spicy as we go here. Step 1. Solve one of the equations for x or y. We already have one that's solved for x, so we're going to keep that. Step 2. Substitute this expression in 4x in the other equation. Now you might notice that this one's a little bit more complicated. We got to be careful, because this whole thing, negative 9y minus 2, is x. When we are substituting it in, we have to make sure that we're using parentheses around it, because it's 4 times x times all of x, and this is all of x. So be really, really careful, because it's really easy to just multiply 4 by the first term, the negative 9y, and then forget about the negative 2. You have to multiply the 4 by both things. But now we have a number outside a set of parentheses, so our instinct is to distribute, and it's a good instinct. So 4 times negative 9 is negative 36y 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. And then we have negative 3y and 31. So these are like terms. Let's see, negative 39y minus 8 equals 31. We want to get y by itself, so we add 8 to both sides. We get negative 39y equals 39. And then finally we divide by negative 39 to get y equals negative 1. Now again, be careful because that's only part of our ultimate solution, our solution that we're looking for. So negative 1 is the y part, we still need to find the x part. And that involves taking one of our initial equations and plugging in the y value that we found. So x equals negative 9 times y, which in this case is negative 1, minus 2. X equals 9 minus 2 for x equals 7. And then finally, negative 5x plus y equals negative 2, and negative 3x plus 6y equals negative 12. Our first step is to get one of these equations equal to x or to y. Now these both look a little bit ugly, but I think I'm going to go with the top one because y already has a coefficient of just 1, which means it's not technically actually needs to be solved much. So what we can do is we can just add 5x to both sides, because then we'll have y equals, again, negative 2 and 5x are not like terms, so we just kind of put them next to each other. So now we have y equals 5x minus 2 in place of what we had up here. So cool, one of our equations is now solved for one of the variables. Moving on to step 2, we now need to evaluate this for y in the other equation. So the negative 3x stays the same, and we have 6 times the quantity that is y. So 6 times 5x minus 2, and then that's equal to negative 12. So again, now that we have this all set up, we would distribute to simplify this. The negative 3x stays. 6 times 5 is 30x. 6 times negative 2 is negative 12, equals negative 12. These look like terms to me. So 27x minus 12 equals negative 12. Trying to get x by itself, so we would add 12 to both sides. 27x equals 0. Divide by 27. X equals 0. But again, 0 is only part of our solution. We still need to go back and find our y value. So we can go back up here to the y equals 5x minus 2. So y equals 5 times 0 minus 2, or y equals negative 2. And we're done. It seems like a lot of work, I know, but once you get the hang of it, it goes pretty quickly.